What is up, guys? We are back today looking at some more wide receiver prospects for the 2023 NFL Draft. We've already looked at the consensus top four in Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, Smith-Njigba, and Zay Flowers. Now we're going to get into five more guys. It's tough to say these are the consensus next five because once you get past those top four, you see people ranking these guys kind of all over the place. But yeah, we're going to look at the next five, and then next week we're going to look at another probably, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 guys. Dad, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Boomer up.
Boomer up. How's looking at these 5 guys? Do overall thoughts of any of them crack into that top 4, ranking above any of those guys in the top 4 for you? Or you
Yeah, I think probably the first guy we're going to talk about, Jalen Hyatt, is probably going to get some love in the draft. Maybe not a first round draft pick, but he's Tennessee guy. He has some speed.
Do you think he belongs in that top tier of 4?
I'd say he's pretty close,
Okay.
but I'm sure there's something that some scout will tell you that he does wrong compared to the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, well,
I know on nfl.com they have him ranked actually pretty high. I think they have him. Let me look at this. They have him as the top receiver.
Really?
So yeah.
Wow.
He's got to give him the top grade. So
wow.
But
that's interesting. Yeah, he's kind of all over. Not all over the place. I think he is the consensus number 5 if you kind of take in everyone's opinions. I have seen him as high as like 4. I think PFF has him at 8. Maybe not 8. They have him not in the top 5, that's for sure. But yeah, we'll talk about him because he is an interesting prospect. I'll kind of start with him. Like you said, he's a speedster. He's fast, decent height. He's 6 foot. I think 180, which is fine. He again, we talked about this with Hendon Hooker. He played at Tennessee. That offense it caters to the offensive numbers kind of explode with how they run that offense, and also it kind of limits the route tree of your receivers. He's basically, I think the biggest criticism I've seen of him is like he was a slot guy who was just basically running verticals and seam routes, like that's what all he was asked to do. But yeah, like you said, he had crazy production at Tennessee last year. He can go up and track that ball really well, but very limited in the route tree. I'm a little hesitant to buy in on him in terms of a fantasy asset, just because when you go and watch his games, so much of his production comes from just being so wide open and being obviously a step or 2 faster than everyone. And yeah, he's part of the reason why he's that wide open. But it's going to be a lot harder to get that wide open in the NFL. And is he just a deep threat? And if he is, what does that mean for fantasy? Like, can you start a guy in a dynasty league that you're starting 10 in a 10-team dynasty league? Like, are you really going to start a guy like that? Or, you kind of want more of the more receptions and a guy who can run all the route tree. So in that sense, I have him a little bit lower than I think you probably do and most people do. And I just feel like he'll be a better NFL guy than a fantasy guy.
Kind of reminds me of Will Fuller a little bit, I guess, but
yeah,
you can see how long his career has lasted. But he seemed to run the deep routes, and again, just like we've kind of said numerous times, put him in the right spot on the right team, and he'll probably do pretty well. He had his junior year, his last year at Tennessee, was his most productive, and the other 2 years before that he played, he didn't seem like he was used as much. He only had about 20 and 21 passes, but this past year, he was averaging almost 19 yards a catch and 15 touchdowns. So he's but he might be might be a little limited in the NFL, at first, but we'll see what happens in the draft.
Yeah. I think he had some injuries. It was 2020, 2021, and part of the reason why. But yeah, and so he's very interesting. I'll be very interested to see where he goes. Again, I think he can be super valuable to just an NFL team. But he's running vertical routes from the slot consistently, and that's just not really something you see a whole lot in the NFL. I mean, you can see it, of course, but not like 70% of your plays where you're just running up the seam. You kind of require more of a route tree in that sense. So that's just where I'm a little worried about, like, in terms of his fantasy production. And also Tennessee's offense. He never, and I saw this from somewhere, where basically, like, he only faced press coverage on like 60 snaps the entire season. And most of those were like screenplays, so he didn't even really run a route. And so, like, okay, how's he going to handle that press coverage, at the line? Because if he can get out muscled, doesn't matter how fast you are, right? So I don't know. For you, Dad, does you have him at number 5, or is he kind of beating anyone in that top 4? I think you said no, but you have him as like your 5th guy.
No, I think there's another guy. I think I liked.
Okay.
I think I like the North Carolina guy.
Okay. Well, we'll get into we'll get into the rankings after, I guess. And I think the next up on my list here is Nathaniel Dell, or Tank Dell. You'll also hear him be called. You want to start with him, Dad, from Houston, by the way. Nathaniel Dell from Houston.
Yeah, last week we took a look at his quarterback, and this guy Tank Dell, as they call him. He's a very he's like a little bit of a jitterbug type guy. He caught a lot of passes his last 2 years in college.
Yeah.
And he's 5'10", 165. So he had almost the last 2 years he had over 1,300 yards. So and quite a few touchdowns, 17 last year and 12 the year before. So he was kind of probably in a high octane offense that I didn't watch a lot of Houston games or anything like that, but probably one of the main guys on a high octane offense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Very, very small. Actually, if he is drafted, or when he's drafted, I should say, he will be the only receiver in the NFL under 170 pounds, because he's under 170 pounds, which is crazy. I think he's like 165 or something. Yeah, 165. So literally the only receiver. There's no receiver under 170 pounds currently in the NFL. But the production is there, like you said. You would think, oh, small, slight injuries, doesn't miss games. Like, he hasn't missed games in his Houston career.
You got to be able to hit him to injure him, so
for sure.
That's one of the keys.
Yeah, but he just like accelerates instantly. Like, there's some guys, maybe like a Quentin Johnston, where it takes 10, 15 yards to kind of get going. This guy is just like instant. Great route runner, in my opinion. Good red zone target, which is something I read. Like, you would think, I think that's the problem with a lot of these smaller guys, is they don't get targeted in the red zone very much. That's the opposite for Dell. He gets targeted in the red zone, and they're throwing fades to him. They're targeting him in the red zone. So his size, he makes up for it somehow. And
I guess his stop start ability is pretty good.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, he does drop the ball a lot, and I'll be the first one to tell you that drops, you have to look into drop. You can't just look at the number of how many drops and say, oh, like he drops passes. Obviously, the guys that are going to get targeted a lot are going to drop more passes. But he did percentage-wise drop a little more than you'd want to see. Not a crazy amount, but it was like over 8%. So that's always an issue. And then again, with these small guys, we talk about press coverage. Like, how are they going to handle press coverage? Because they don't do it as much in college. And these offenses don't, they're built in a way where they don't have to worry about that. And happens more in the NFL. So I think he can win on the outside, and I think he can win in the slot. And I really like Nathaniel Dell and be very interested. I think a lot of teams are going to be afraid to take him. I think he's going to drop a bit, but I do think he's going to be a good player in the NFL for sure. Anything else you want to say about him?
Yeah, not really. So I didn't know the guy until I started looking at his videos the last couple of days, and but
yeah, he's one of those guys that if you watch, I did like my first Houston game I worked on with PFF, where it's just like that guy stands out, like he's standing out, and like you said, just targeted a lot, and just how smooth he is throughout running. So yeah, we'll get into the next guy, Josh Downs, which you said you like Josh Downs, another small guy from North Carolina. So you want to start off? What did you think of Downs?
North Carolina, Josh Downs, 5'10", 175. So kind of light, but his last 2 years in college, he had a lot of production. Caught over 100 passes his sophomore year, and then 94 this past year. I think they have a really good quarterback at North Carolina who's going to be highly sought after next year in the NFL draft. So,
Yeah, Drake May.
Yeah. So they have a pretty good passing game. This guy was obviously one of his main targets and stuff. So he, I liked his video. He looks good. Again, he's just a smaller guy. Not blazing speed, but it's under 4.5. It's 4.48. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean,
yeah,
when you're running in the 4.4s, that's considered pretty good. So he just, I guess he looks another slot type guy. I think of what he's gonna be.
Yeah. Do you think he could be anywhere but the slot, in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see these smaller guys on the outside so much, but maybe I'm missing something, as far as thinking of little bigger receivers or something like that. But
yeah, I mean, you have to have, if you're going to be smaller, there has to be something you have that can make you play on the outside. Like, again, I go back to T.Y. Hilton. He played on the outside, not exclusively, but he was in there on 2 wide receiver sets. There's no slot receiver there, and so he had the speed to kind of win on the outside. Yeah, and I just don't see that with Josh Downs. I think he is a slot guy, and I think his role is going to be limited. Like, he's a terrible run blocker. I don't know if you caught that on some of the film, but he also graded out, on these metrics of run blocking terribly. And I know maybe people are thinking, why does that matter for fantasy? Well, it does, because that's going to limit your role on teams. On a teams, they want to disguise runs as passes and passes as runs. And if you're in there as a receiver, you are just absolutely dog shit at run blocking, like that gives them a clue as like what the play is going to be. And so he's not going to be as versatile as you kind of want. So I do like him, and he does also one of those guys that seems to play bigger than what he is. He can jump really high and far, which is impressive for a smaller guy. Good route running, but I just don't think he can win on the outside, and I just think he's really limited to a slot guy, which isn't terrible. I've seen comparisons like a Cole Beasley or a Renfro, where they can have seasons where they produce as top receivers fantasy wise.
Yeah. What about a guy like Edelman or something like that?
Yeah.
Probably. So they got a role in the offense. Again, they got. They're part of the offense. So there's obviously, they can't exclusively carry the team or anything like that. But
For sure. And they can have years like Beasley has had with Josh Allen, or Renfro had a couple years ago, with maybe they're catching a bunch of touchdowns, or catching a bunch of passes. So if you're on a pass heavy team, so I can see that from him. But I'm always just hesitant about how far do I want to draft a guy like that in a dynasty draft. Like I'm going to take, for example, in my opinion, a Nathaniel Dell, even though he's also small. I think he can win on the outside. So I think there's a little more potential for him to be a top receiver, rather than I think it's kind of capped at Josh Downs. So
I drafted a rookie last year, Wandale Robinson, and yeah, so he's one of those smaller guys, but he ended up getting hurt, so he's still on my dynasty team. So you just got to wait, I guess. I got to wait a year or two. I guess him and Will Levis, the quarterback from Kentucky, did pretty well together, but
yeah,
but the guy needs some time in the NFL, so we'll see. That's what some of these some of these smaller slot guys.
Sure, for sure. And I just sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what they could turn into.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree, and I'm saying right now I have Nathaniel Dell, Houston higher than him. But if you were to tell me in 10 years that Josh Downs had a better career than Dell, I'm going to be like, yeah, sure, I see it. Because he can fit that role in that offense, that safe slot guy in an offense. So cool. So we've touched on 3 with Nathaniel Dell, Josh Downs, and Jalen Hyatt. Got 2 more to look at. We'll look at the next guy, Kayshon Boutte from LSU. Not a small guy, more of a ideal size, I guess, traditional size. He's not huge. He's 6 foot, but he is 205, which is good size. And basically what I've heard from him, and you can see it in some of the game films, is like he shows flashes, but he's not consistent. LSU's quarterback situation, I think, is not the best, so that could be part of the reason. But what I hear about him is that he just kind of oozes potential, Kayshon Boutte, and he's young. He's only 20 years old. And he just has that potential of like, okay, he's still young. We see the potential there. He's really elusive, good speed, not amazing speed, but good speed, good size. He can be explosive. He can catch after the run. But the biggest thing I saw, and what I hear as well, or what I read, I should say, is he needs to do better at the contested catches. And like those are so important in the NFL, not as important in college, because you can get away with your athleticism more. Everyone is athletic in the NFL, and you're going to be making contested catches more often than not. And you need to be able to go up and win those in order to be successful, a stud receiver, basically. So he needs to be better at that and just be able to kind of go up and get that ball. But there is that potential there, and I always like that. But he did have two surgeries on the same ankle, so that is another concern. So yeah, what did you think about Kayshon Boutte?
Yeah, there's nothing that really jumps off the board for me for this guy. Kind of like you said, a young guy, a 20-year-old coming out. He's got good physical attributes, as you said, 6 foot 205, a little more of a traditional wide receiver. He's coming out of a LSU, SEC conference. So I mean, there's a lot of good players there and things like that. So his numbers, he's got 3 years worth of stats. None of them really jumped off the board.
Mhm.
You know, less than 50 catches all 3 years that he played. So there's
Which isn't
maybe
always on them, but could be on the
no, not really.
offense.
But like you said, we know LSU is kind of had their ups and downs the last couple of years. You know, he does drop the ball at says 12%. That seems pretty
That's
high,
high. Yes, that's very high.
but there's only 7 of them. So
Yeah, like you said, he didn't catch a lot of passes, so less targets,
yeah,
obviously, but 12% is very high. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think what you saw kind of echoes a lot of people's concerns. Like, man, he looks, and I kind of cheated. I watched a few more games from him, but yeah, he looks amazing sometimes, and then he's just like not there other times. And why is there no consistency there? Um, and so maybe teams are worried about that, but I just think he has that potential to be the X receiver. And for those that don't know, an X receiver, the guy that's out on the outside and he's lining up on the line of scrimmage, he has that potential to be that guy. And those are where a lot of the fantasy stats come from. The guys that aren't limited to the slot, they can win on the outside. And I think Butte can do that. And he's a guy that, depending on where he goes, he could rise really, really high for me. Just because I see the potential. But I also see what you mean about nothing stands out at times. Like, okay, nothing amazing. 4.45 40 is good, but it's not amazing, right? So yeah, anything else with Butte?
no, not really.
Into our last guy, which I've seen this guy ranked as high as like 6 or 7. I've seen him ranked as low as like in the 20s, kind of everywhere. It's Marvin Mims from Oklahoma. And he's definitely has the speed to be a deep threat. He is a bigger guy as well, 6'3", 200, which is more ideal type of receiver. He runs a 4.38, which is really fast. Can jump up and get it. I think he's gonna have a good role in a good NFL offense. But I think the biggest concern with me was just didn't see a whole lot of routes run from him. Maybe gets out muscled a bit. And that's going to be even more of an issue with NFL corners. But you talk about a deep threat, like this guy can be a deep threat for a team for sure. What did you think about?
Yeah, his last 2 years, last 2 years at Oklahoma, he averaged over 20 yards a catch.
Yep.
So you could kind of tell what they were using him in their offense, going deep and stuff like that. So he's fast. I've got inconsistent numbers on his height. I look on NFL.com and it says he's 5'11",
Yeah.
and PFF says he's 6'3".
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with PFF right here because I think there probably is a little more up to date.
Yeah, I do see both. I think he is 6'3". I did see that as well. I was a little confused.
Yeah, his
But yeah.
40-yard dash is 4.38, so that's pretty good. I mean, he's looks like an outside receiver or something. So
Yeah,
Oklahoma is kind of a happy offense, so he was probably getting a lot of attention, and
yeah,
we'll have to see how things kind of shake out with him.
yeah. To me, he just kind of screams like an MVS type of player. Of just like, yeah, he's good at what he does. I just don't think he's going to be a complete receiver. And he's not going to be able to win consistently with his skill set. Will he be good for an offense? Yeah, he'll provide value for sure. But he just kind of he screams like an MVS type of guy for me. And as we know from fantasy, that's really hard to find a place for that guy to start, or even maybe on a roster. Just because it's like, well, when are you ever going to start him, a player like that? So that's kind of how I felt about him. But should we anything else?
No, I think that's a pretty right on observation there.
Yeah.
He could be
yeah.
Alan Lazard and get 44 million.
Yeah. Maybe. So should we get into like where do you have maybe how you rank these guys, or?
Yeah, this one's a little more of a crapshoot, but let me go first.
Sure.
Probably we did Hyatt this time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he was
So
the
I
first
probably
guy.
have Hyatt, then Downs, and then Mims, and then
Nathaniel
Tank
Dell.
Dell, then yeah, the LSU Butte guy last.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little different. I have Nathaniel, Tank Dell, fifth for me. I think he's just right outside those top four guys. I mean, he's a tier down for sure, but I think he is the fifth guy just for his potential. But I also see him sliding in drafts, so that will be interesting to see how to approach that. Like, what if he goes in the fourth round or something, fifth round? And then I have Butte sixth for me, just again for the potential that he has. And then Downs, it's just like, if you told me Downs was the best out of all these guys, I wouldn't be surprised. I think he's gonna have a good long career, 10-year career. It's just for fantasy purposes, where's he gonna be? You know, is he gonna have like one or two good fantasy seasons, or is he gonna have 4 or 5? So remains to be seen. So again, Nathaniel Dell. I've already forgot. Oh, Butte, Josh Downs, and then Hyatt, and then Mims for me. So if
Wow,
those last
Mims
two,
last.
yeah, just those last two guys. I just see a lot of being, most of the production coming from deep passes being wide open,
Yeah.
and I just think that's not going to happen as much in the NFL. But you do have to credit them; they're part of the reason why they're open. So that's just my preference in receivers for fantasy. Again, for fantasy purposes, if we're talking regular NFL. I probably higher in my opinion, because I think he's going to be very, very valuable to a team. So yeah, that's I think that's it then. We've gone through the next 5, so we've gone through 9 total. Next week we'll probably, I don't know, we'll try and get to 20. I think. I know that sounds like a lot. 11 more guys. Definitely another 8 guys. I mean, there's going to be 25 to 30, mid 30s receivers taken, I think, almost every year. I think 25 is probably low. The high 20s to mid 30s every year. So I'd like to get to at least 20 guys in pre-draft, and then maybe look at some other guys we missed post-draft. But yeah, anything else you want to say, or we want to wrap it up?
No, I think we can wrap it up.
All right, wrap it up. And yeah, as always, we'll see you guys next week with more wide receivers.